The seriousness of a charge must be matched by the weight of the evidence. If an accuser doesn't know the specifics of what, where, why, when an alleged impropriety happened that are corroborated by facts by way of a Democrat senator claiming it matters now, who knew about an alleged accusation of impropriety sitting on it for 3 months, that was never reported before the Senate Judicial Committee, which allegedly happened over 35 years ago. And if the same accuser doesn't even want to face the accused publicly, breaking thousands of years of judicial tradition where the accused has the right to face his or her accuser, all the while making demands to delay testifying before Congress as a tactic designed to hinder the voting of a Supreme Court justice, it only proves that this Democrat fiasco is merely a liberal political charade and con job, and therefore there's no reason to waste anyone's time obstructing the U.S. Senate proceeding preventing confirming this Supreme Court nominee named Brett Kavanaugh. But one positive thing the Justice Kavanaugh proceeding has done for America is that it allows all Americans to see for themselves what low levels of cruelty and injustice these socialist Democrat Party leaders would stoop to in order to destroy a man's lifelong career, good character, and family, in order to take constitutional power and freedom from the American people and place their socialist activist judges to the Supreme Court in order to legislate and make laws from the bench. Now watch how Republican Senator Lindsey Graham deals with these fascist Democrats as they try to ruin a man's career and family viciously just to take power away from the American people. He surely has stood up for our freedoms and rights and the rule of law.
Are you aware that at 9:23 on the night of July the 9th, the day you were nominated to the Supreme Court by President Trump, Senator Schumer said, 23 minutes after your nomination, "I will oppose Judge Kavanaugh's nomination with everything I have, and I hope a bipartisan majority will do the same. The stakes are simply too high for anything less." Well, if you weren't aware of it, you are now. Did you meet with Senator Dianne Feinstein on August 20th?
I did meet with Senator Feinstein.
Did you know that her staff had already recommended a lawyer to Dr. Ford?
I did not know that.
Did you know that her and her staff had this allegations for over 20 days?
I did not know that at the time.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Are you a gang rapist?
No.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham, that you knew about it and you held it. You had no intention of protecting Dr. Ford. None. She's as much of a victim as you are. God, I hate to say it because these have been my friends. But let me tell you, when it comes to this, you're looking for a fair process. You came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend. Do you consider this a job interview?
The advice and consent role is like a job
interview. You consider that you've been through a job interview?
I've been through a process of advice and consent under the Constitution.
Would you say you've been through hell?
I've been through hell and then some.
This is not a job interview.
Yeah.
This is hell.
This
is going to destroy the ability of good people to come forward because of this crap. Your high school yearbook. You have interacted with professional women all your life, not one accusation. Here's my understanding. If you lived a good life, people would recognize it, like the American Bar Association has the gold standard. His integrity is absolutely unquestioned. He is the very circumspect in his personal conduct, harbors no biases or prejudices. He's entirely ethical, is a really decent person. He is warm, friendly, unassuming. He's the nicest person. The ABA. The one thing I can tell you, you should be proud of. Ashley, you should be proud of this. That you raised a daughter who had the good character to pray for Dr. Ford. To my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I have seen in my time in politics. I hope you're on the Supreme Court. That's exactly where you should be. And I hope that the American people will see through this charade. And I wish you well, and I intend to vote for you, and I hope everybody who's fair-minded will.
One thing I can say most definitely is that the Kavanaugh hearings have just fired up the Republican Party, conservatives and independents. Blacks, whites, everybody who loves America, we're seeing a tyrannical aspect of the Democrat Party, the Democrat socialists or socialist Democrats, fascists. They have waged a campaign all about power. They're not interested in an ethical form of government where there's law and order, where you're innocent until proven guilty. They believe you're guilty before being proven innocent. These people are lawmakers. And because they're lawmakers, they are the ones that are the helm of putting laws together. They believe literally that this woman's allegations, which is uncorroborated, there's no evidence for it. All the witnesses, the 3 witnesses that she mentions that were with her, were not present. They gave statements, sworn statements, under penalty of perjury, that none of the claims that she said were true. All of her evidences were not true. There's no evidence that she was even, Kavanaugh was even at the party. He took great notes and about where he was at what time, even high school. Now, it's a shame that if you're going to get a Supreme Court justice, he's got to have had a clean, squeaky record all the way through high school, and you have to take good notes every single day of your existence in high school just to be confirmed on the Supreme Court. The Democrat Party has made it impossible, almost impossible, to find good candidates. And just by chance, we happen to have a Supreme Court justice that took great notes. He had calendars because his father was a great mentor to him. And he's told everyone that during the hearings, during his confirmation hearings, during this witch hunt where he's being attacked. He's been attacked by every part of the media, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, the Washington Post, the New York Times, all of these big wig, liberal-owned, Democrat-owned and controlled news media. And he's been attacked, a coordinated attack through George Soros, another socialist that hates America and hates his own Jewish people, which he persecuted, being a Nazi, and the Democrat Party supports him because he gives so much money to the Democrat Party, a Democrat Party that's being headed by an actual card-carrying member of the Communist Party who believes in Sharia law and believes that Sharia law courts should be all throughout America and we should be subjugated to international law. That's your Democrat Party, folks. That's the Democrat Party today. They're tyrants. They should never gain power. They're fascists. And every young person should rise up and stand up and vote Republican and defend your country from these people from outside destroying your country. These are maybe American people, but they're not people who are for America. We have a party that's completely diametrically opposed to the American people, diametrically opposed to the Constitution. They hate our laws. They're lawless. They defend MS-13, which is cutting off people's heads with machetes and chopping up little children all down the line. That's your Democrat Party today, folks. And we have a Democrat Party who supports Antifa, a bunch of fascists who believe that we should not have a safe, secure country at all. They want tyranny. They want anarchy. That's your Democrat Party.
Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. You'd think the near assassination of Republican Congressman Steve Scalise by a Democratic activist last week would have set off some soul-searching on the left about the growing strain of violent extremism in its midst. If you fantasize about hurting people long enough, somebody's going to get hurt, and now somebody has. But no. In fact, the opposite has happened. Throughout the progressive world, in politics, in entertainment, on MSNBC, in higher education, talk of violence has, if anything, grown louder since those shootings. Here's the latest. It comes from Nebraska. Phil Montag, a longtime liberal activist and official with the state's Democratic Party, caught on tape applauding the shooting of Steve Scalise.
I hate this mother.
Yeah.
I'm glad he got shot.
We've laid in
I'm glad he got shot.
Dude.
I'm not going to say that in public.
You don't have
Well,
to
then
say
what
that
are you
in public.
saying it to us
Say
for?
something. Say something.
What are you telling us for?
I wish he was dead.
I'm glad he got shot. No subtlety there. Well, at Trinity College in Connecticut, professor of racism studies Johnny Williams agreed with that. He wrote this on social media after the shootings, quote, "Let them effing die." Williams wasn't fired from his post, far from it. His fellow Trinity faculty issued a fawning letter of support for him today. One colleague compared him to Salman Rushdie, persecuted by religious extremists. In this case, of course, Christians, not Islamists. A Change.org petition supporting Williams has drawn nearly 2,000 signatures as of tonight, and it's growing. Professor Let Them Effing Die is fast becoming a folk hero on the left. Meanwhile, fading actor Johnny Depp says he's excited about the possibility of a modern-day John Wilkes Booth stepping forward to murder the president.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
Well, on Twitter, Marcella Arguello, she's a writer for Bill Nye's new Netflix show, had this to say about the Scalise shooting, quote, "If a few old-ass conservative white men have to die in order to get the gun control issue discussed, then I'm willing to take that risk." As of tonight, she's apparently still got her job. And extremism isn't just online. Having just watched partisanship ending in gunfire, you'd think lawmakers might try to lower the temperature a little bit. Not Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. Here she is accusing her Republican colleagues of deliberately plotting to kill Americans for money.
These cuts are blood money. People will die. Let's be very clear. Senate Republicans are paying for tax cuts for the wealthy with American lives.
Okay, so you disagree with me on a piece of legislation, therefore you're a murderer. This is how things fall apart. When you no longer see political differences as legitimate, but instead as moral crimes. When you begin to believe your opponents are unworthy of life itself. When you start to make excuses for violence. That is all happening now. What do you think happens next? America's worth living in because we have a stable democratic order. We use debate and elections to resolve political disputes, not violence. And it's all worked for hundreds of years. But the system, and don't forget this, is fragile. It will break unless our leaders commit to preserving it. Democracy may or may not die in darkness. It definitely will die in a hail of bullets. Tammy Bruce is a radio talk show host and a keen observer of what's going on in this country. She joins us now. Tammy,
Hi.
Where's this going?
You know, historically, unfortunately, we know where it's going. This is predictable and predicted. Historically, wherever the left has been in power, and either it's to get power or if someone tries to move them out of power, the movement is to do violence. It's a dynamic where they realize that in order to have the cultural dynamic continue, the only way to maintain power is to silence those who are against them or those who do not conform, and of course that takes the form of violence. In the 20th century, of course, just 3 countries, Soviet Union, Communist China, and the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia.
Right.
Estimates are up to about 70 million people killed simply in order to maintain power. So this is what we have to be aware of. While our system is genius and brilliant, it's the leftist ideology that is new, and that our system in a lot of ways also allows to effectively breed in a way. And if we don't decide to take steps to condemn it, and as you've said in your opening, Tucker, whether it's Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton put out a tweet today saying that the Republican Party is the death party. After an attempted assassination of 22 GOP leaders at that baseball field, even Barack Obama, who's never at a loss for words, has said nothing publicly to condemn it or to tell people to step back. This is my worry, that the silence is also in a certain way could be interpreted as acquiescence and in some ways encouragement.
Well, see, that's what shocks me. I mean, I don't think any political movement ought to be held liable for the lunacy of its fringes. I mean, there are lunatics on all sides for sure, and I've met some of them. But I do think that the people in charge, in power, in authority, have a moral responsibility to set the limits of behavior and to say, that's totally wrong. You're not allowed to do that. Violence is outside the pale. They're not doing that. Where's the New York Times editorial denouncing this kind of stuff?
Right. See, this is it. And even if, let's say you had taken, Tucker, a week off, the week that the shooting happened in Arlington, and you unplugged and you weren't connected, just in returning 1 week later, with looking at the headlines online or otherwise, you never would have even have known that it occurred. And we're not going to be able to stop this unless we're willing to admit that it's happening, admit what the core sources of this. And remember, it's also, we've been looking at masked violent individuals trying to interrupt the inaugural on our campuses, the Occupy movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. It's changed from trying to engage everyone as a whole to the suggestion that this disruption is appropriate, that violence, arson is the way to go. And even then, not only were there not condemnations of it, but the left funded it and held it effectively to some degree as heroism. And that also, for Americans and everyone around the world, we're now awash in violence because of terrorism. We see it all over the world. It inures people to it, and that's another dynamic that's affecting our young people here, that, oh, this is normal. Well, someone's got to start saying that it's not.
But I think that's a really smart point. Wasn't this inevitable, though, the minute the people in charge began to use terms like resistance or started to say things like don't legitimize the president? Because what they're really saying is it's not worth having a conversation. It's not worth debating. Talking isn't enough.
Right.
Doesn't that set the stage for violence once you say that?
Well, it does. My first book, actually now 17 years ago, talked about groupthink. And that's when you start to believe that you have sole possession of the truth. And that everyone else, if you've got sole possession of the truth, obviously no one else does. And that makes them, well, not only not as good as you, but not even worthy. And when you start to cast individuals as less than human, as people who are actually out to get you,
that's right.
There's really only one answer to how you react to that. And it's shocking, after the Arlington attempted assassinations, the fact that the rhetoric has not really shifted is the shocking point. And people on both sides of the aisle, certainly Democrats, good liberals out there, need to start demanding from their heroes of Sanders and Warren and Hillary to do more than a single statement, but to really stay with it and to encourage people to step back from this.
That's exactly right, because as you said at the outset, we can see exactly where this is going.
Yeah.
Tammy Bruce, thanks. That was wise.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The point is that the Democrat Party has been pushing policies such as higher taxes. They've been pushing policies where they are supporting the various drug cartels and using the violence that people are creating to push gun control on the American people. And the American people are sensible. Young people are sensible, and we don't want that. We want a safe, secure country. We believe that a nation without borders is no nation at all. And America is a great place to fight for. It's a great place to be. But we need to have a nation of law and orders. And so when Democrats are out there saying that we're going to use accusations and then accuse this person of wrongdoing when there's no evidence, no corroborating evidence, it's just not fair. We believe in a fair society, and to make a person guilty before proven innocent is just not right. And we as Americans, whether you be young, old, black, white, whatever your race is, we're all American people, and we all are a nation of law and order. If we don't become a nation of law and order, then that means tyranny can happen, anarchy can happen. And that's not a nation you want to live in. You don't want a nation where your politicians are beholden to gangs and saying that the lawless behavior of criminals is just fine or they'll say that in order to reduce crime, we're going to remove some of the laws so we have less crime. But that doesn't make any sense, because the reason why we have laws is so we can protect the innocent. We don't want a lawless society, but this is what the Democrats are pushing for, more lawlessness. And as American people, we won't survive as a nation that is completely lawless. We can't allow people to destroy us from the inside out. And so we as Americans need to really consider who we're voting for and really ask some questions. Are they just pushing socialized medicine, pushing our country towards socialism, which means more government control, or do we want more competition so that we get lower prices? Do we want a country that creates more dependency on government, or do we want people to have more economic freedom? If you want economic freedom, you're going to vote Republican. If you want more dependency and more government, you're going to vote Democrat. You know, and those who have power, control, they would want you to be more dependent on them so that they can guarantee that you'll vote for them because you're dependent. It's like a little plantation, you see? But for those who are thinking Americans, they want to be free. That's why people come to our country, because they see the opportunities to be economically prosperous, to raise their own families how they wish, and not allow government to take over the parental rights. But unfortunately, if you look at the Democrat Party, they typically want to take over the parental rights and remove the parent out of the way, just like Hitler and all the various socialist groups wanted to in the past. But we have the opportunity now to see through all this. We see what the Democrats are doing, even during this Kavanaugh hearing, and we see, hey, this is just not fair. And we want to create a more informed citizenry where there's real love, where justice is part of our society. It's not just social justice, it's justice that's social to the American people. And there has to be a standard, and we have to be a nation of law and order, or we'll have lawlessness. So, again, this is a great opportunity for you young people to vote differently, and vote Republican, vote red, because right now our nation's at stake right now. And no young person wants their past to be drug up and misrepresented into their adulthood when they were children. But this is what's happening to Justice Kavanaugh right now, because the Democrats want power. And this is why young people just don't want to be a part of a party like that. They will hold the things when they were children against them. It's completely wrong, and young people see through it. They see how cruel the Democrat Party is, and it's unjust. And it's time for a change, and the next generation has an opportunity to vote differently. It's okay to vote Republican, regardless of how your teachers may pressure you, regardless of all the artificial peer pressure you may see in the entertainment world and the news you listen to. Young people, young adults, college students, it's okay to love America. It's okay to vote for your Constitution. It's okay for all the races to come together and to be unity. It's okay to vote Republican. Vote red this year, and may the red wave begin to take over this nation. Now let's see what Hannity has to say about these things.
Right before your eyes, a total miscarriage of justice at the highest court in the land. There is no due process, no presumption of innocence, no burden of proof. And as we speak, you have the Democratic Party, the left in America, the media in America, all their friends are literally saying guilt by accusation and trying to destroy the character, career, reputation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh based on what is decades-old, uncorroborated allegations. Now, ambiguous claims we have here. Kavanaugh himself is categorically refuting it under oath, and the so-called witnesses categorically denied. Now, of course, this coordinated effort to take down Judge Kavanaugh, we're going to show you tonight, is nothing new from the Democratic Party. There is good reason to be skeptical, as serious as these allegations are, and we have said from the beginning to take them seriously. We're going to have tonight a Hannity history lesson on how Democrats, the left in this country, use identity politics every 2 years, every 4 years to gain an electoral advantage, all while destroying the reputation of their opponents in the process. The tactics of the left should disgust every rational thinking American who loves and cares about this country, our core values. This isn't about Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative tonight. We'll also discuss the controversy surrounding the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein. The president should under no circumstances fire this beleaguered bureaucrat. We're going to explain that and so much more. This is a very important breaking news opening monologue. Tonight, Judge Brett Kavanaugh is fighting back and standing up for his good name and his reputation, and he's demanding a fair process. He says he won't be intimidated. After days of negotiations with the Senate Judiciary Committee, Professor Christine Ford has now agreed to testify about the allegations she made against Judge Kavanaugh. Let me be perfectly clear. These are serious allegations. I've said it many times. Professor Ford deserves to be heard. And those allegations and accusations should be taken seriously. And this coming Thursday, you, the American people, will be able to hear from both Professor Ford and Judge Kavanaugh in an open setting. Now, Chairman Grassley of the Senate Judiciary Committee, he was right to hold this hearing, and the Republicans have been and are being extremely fair and accommodating, and they're taking these allegations seriously. But tonight we need to step back, and we need to remember what we're talking about here. These are 35-year-old sexual misconduct allegations made by Professor Ford to congressional Democrats. Now, the claims date back to when Ford and Kavanaugh were in high school. Senator Dianne Feinstein, she was aware of Professor Ford's allegations since July. She sat on them. She kept them a secret until after Kavanaugh's public hearing and after lengthy meetings with Judge Kavanaugh. In fact, Dianne Feinstein refused to give Senate Republicans, her colleagues, the full unredacted letter where the accusations were first made back in July until today. Now, Professor Ford cannot remember a date or location of the alleged incident. The 4 witnesses that Ford herself listed to corroborate her claims, they are all now on record denying what Ford is alleging. And just a short time ago, Judge Kavanaugh sat down with our own Martha McCallum and categorically refuted these claims once again. Let's take a look.
I may have met her. We did not travel in the same social circles. She was not a friend, not someone I knew.
You don't remember ever being at parties with her ever?
I do not. And this is an allegation about a party in the summer of 1982 at a house near Connecticut Avenue and East-West Highway with 5 people present. I was never at any such party. The other people who are alleged to be present have said they do not remember any such party. A woman who was present, another woman who was present, who is Dr. Ford's lifelong friend, has said she doesn't know me and never remembers being at a party with me at any time in her life.
All right, tonight, Kavanaugh is now facing one more allegation because over the weekend, the New Yorker, well, they brought up another decades-old claim against Kavanaugh. In this case, a woman named Deborah Ramirez. She's claiming that in the 1980s, again, when he was a freshman in college, that Kavanaugh exposed himself to her at a drunken college party at Yale University. Ramirez herself wasn't totally sure if Kavanaugh was the perpetrator. According to the New Yorker, she became, quote, quickly inebriated at the party, her words. She told the New Yorker that she was, quote, foggy and slurring her words. And she even acknowledged that she has significant memory gaps from that evening. Now, the New York Times, well, they spent over a week trying to corroborate her story, talking to dozens of people. And the Times said this, quote, they have interviewed several dozen people over the past week in an attempt to corroborate her story. They could find no one with firsthand knowledge. Ms. Ramirez herself contacted former Yale classmates asking if they recalled the incident and told some of them that she could not be certain Mr. Kavanaugh was the one who exposed himself. And those who Ramirez listed as witnesses in yet another case here, well, to the indecent charges, well, they're all flatly denying. And this is what they said. We can say with confidence that if the incident Debbie alleges ever occurred, we would have seen or heard about it. We did not. The behavior that she describes would be completely out of character for Brett. In addition, some of us knew Debbie long after Yale. She never described this incident until Brett's Supreme Court nomination was pending. The New Yorker also interviewed Ramirez's best friend at the time of the alleged incident, and she's also denying any knowledge of her claims. And she said, quote, this is a woman I was best friends with. We shared intimate details of our lives. I was never told this story by her or by anyone else. It never came up. I didn't see it. I never heard of it happening. Now, Judge Kavanaugh also denied emphatically these decades-old charges in a statement. He wrote, quote, well, these are smears, pure and simple, and they debase our public discourse, but they are also a threat to any man or woman who wishes to serve our country. Such grotesque and obvious character assassination, if allowed to succeed, will dissuade competent and good people of all all political persuasions from service. As I told the committee during my hearing, a federal judge must be independent, not swayed by public or political pressure. That is the kind of judge I will always be. I will not be intimidated into withdrawing from this process. The coordinated effort to destroy my good name will not drive me out. The vile threats of violence against my family will not drive me out. The last-minute character assassination will not succeed. And tonight, Kavanaugh once again denied these charges in his interview with Martha. Let's take a look.
I never did any such thing. Never did any such thing. The other people alleged to be there don't recall any such thing. If such a thing had happened, it would have been the talk of campus. The women I knew in college and the men I knew in college says it's inconceivable that I could have done such a thing. And the New York Times has reported that just last week, the person making the accusation was calling other classmates saying she was not sure that I had done this. Again, just asking for a fair process where I can be heard and I can defend my integrity.
And during this interview, he took it even a step further. Let's watch this.
People generally in high school, I think all of us have probably done things we look back on in high school and regret or cringe a bit. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an allegation of sexual assault. I've never sexually assaulted anyone. I did not have sexual intercourse or anything close to sexual intercourse in high school or for many years thereafter. And the girls from the schools I went to and I were friends.
So you're saying that through all these years that are in question, you were a virgin?
That's correct.
Never had sexual intercourse with anyone in high school?
Correct.
And through what years in college, since we're probing into your personal life here?
Many years after. I'll leave it at that. Many years after.
Then Brett Kavanaugh went on to defend his character as a young student at Yale. Watch this.
Was there ever a time that you drank so much that you couldn't remember what happened the night before?
No. That never happened.
You never said to anyone, I don't remember anything about last night?
No. That did not happen.
Did you ever have any sense that any kind of the description of the behavior that I just described with these, women being taken into rooms and raped or having sex with a number of men, consensual or otherwise, that was going on at the parties that you were at?
I never saw any such thing. Any such thing. I certainly never participated in any such thing, but I never saw or heard of any such thing. And I was focused on trying to be number one in my class and being captain of the varsity basketball team and doing my service projects, going to church. The vast majority of the time I spent in high school was studying or focused on sports and being a good friend to the boys and the girls that I was friends with. We have these great lifelong friendships.
Now, despite all of these charges, Judge Kavanaugh says he will not be quiet. He is vowing not to be intimidated into withdrawing his nomination. And while Judge Kavanaugh is standing firm, rightly demanding a fair process, it is so important to remember the toll that it also takes on a family. Again, where's the presumption of innocence? Let's take a look.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to have these conversations with your children, which we've had to have, some broader terms for our youngest, but they know Brett and they know the truth. And we told them at the very beginning of this process, this will be not fun sometimes. You're gonna hear things that people feel strongly, and you need to know that, and just remember, you know your dad.
Now, while President Trump, he is standing by his nominee tonight, and he predicted earlier today that, in fact, he will be confirmed. Let's take a look at this.
It would be sad indeed if something happened to reroute that. This is a fine man, and we certainly hope he's going to be confirmed, and quickly. His family has suffered. His family has suffered. What's going on is not something that should happen. Brett Kavanaugh is an absolute outstanding person. Hopefully, he will be confirmed quickly.
Now, this all comes as one false smear about Judge Kavanaugh has officially been debunked. The mainstream media, Democrats, were gleefully spreading a rumor that female students were coached by a law professor on how to dress in an outgoing way when they were interviewing with Judge Kavanaugh. a rumor that the professor is completely denying. Now, despite everything we just showed you, and before any public testimony, there are people in this country, this should not be political, Democrats, people on the left, they have already convicted Judge Kavanaugh. And according to them, he has no presumption of innocence, no right to be heard, no reason to be believed, no due process. You know, actually, there are lawmakers that are throwing law out the window and claiming his guilt by accusation. This should not happen in this country. Take a look.
The Senate shouldn't simply rely on hearing two conflicting accounts and decide, well, we're okay with not knowing, we're okay with the fact that we might be putting someone who committed attempted rape on the Supreme Court of the United States.
I believe her. Listen, first of all, anybody who comes forward at this point to be prepared to testify in the United States Senate against someone who's being nominated to one of the most powerful positions in the United States government, that takes an extraordinary amount of courage.
Not only do women like Dr. Ford, who bravely comes forward, need to be heard, but they need to be believed. They need to be believed. I just want to say to the men of this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing.
Let me just say right at the outset, I believe Dr. Ford. I believe the survivor here. There's every reason to believe her. She has come forward courageously and bravely.
I believe her. I stand with her. And
do you hope she shows up on Monday? Do you hope that she testifies?
I don't think she should be bullied into this scenario where it's a he said, she said. It's a sham hearing. And I don't think she should participate in it.
I believe Professor Ford. I think she's credible. And I think when the investigation is finished and when she testifies and Judge Kavanaugh testifies, I think a majority of senators will find her credible, and I never thought Kavanaugh should get appointed.
No presumption of innocence. Now, at the very same time, all the people you're watching here, we have a case not 36, 7, or 5 or 4 years ago, where Keith Ellison, the number 2 person, the number 2 guy at the DNC, has been accused of repeated physical and emotional abuse. And the DNC has smeared and slandered and ignored the person making that allegation. That's back in August this year. So what you're watching is a Democratic Party playing politics, sadly exploiting a sexual conduct allegation, accusation, that's it, for political gain. Jumping to conclusions, rushing to judgment. Now, these are serious allegations, and as I've said, we should hear from the accuser. But tonight, every American, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, this is why you need a healthy dose of skepticism. Let me tell you why. The attorney representing Professor Ford, her name is Deborah Katz, has views on sexual assault that have been extraordinarily political and inconsistent at best. For example, she said this about Paula Jones. Nobody in the media reports it. Now, Paula Jones' suit is very, very, very weak, and she alleged one incident that took place at a hotel room that, by her own testimony, lasted 10 to 12 minutes. She suffered no repercussions in the workplace. She then said of Jones' accusations, quote, clearly a one-time incident that took place in 10 to 12 minutes, and she was not forced to have sex. She left of her own volition. The courts increasingly are finding that is not enough to create a sexually hostile work environment claim. And she also defended creepy Senator Al Franken, quote, context is relevant. He did not do this as a member of the U.S. Senate. Yeah, he did. And by the way, he did this in his capacity of someone who is still functioning as an entertainer. Clearly, Professor Ford's attorney has a left-wing, radical, inconsistent political agenda. And the Daily Caller even uncovered back in 2017, this same attorney said she vowed to resist President Trump. We've got the tape. Here it is.
Finally over the finish line, the new Attorney General this morning grateful to the colleagues who fought for him.
I can't express how appreciative I am For those of you who stood by me during this difficult time,
we will protest. It was a bitter feud to the very end.
We're going to fight back. We are going to resist. We will not be silent.
We're going to fight back. We're going to resist. And now we're also learning that Professor Ford is adding one more person to his legal team, an attorney named Michael Bromwich. He's the lawyer currently representing fired FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Now, this brings us to our Hannity history lesson surrounding the Democratic playbook. Now, every 2 to 4 years in politics, every election cycle, Democrats use the politics of personal destruction to literally maim the character of their political opponents, even if it means lying in the process. They demonize all conservatives. There's not a conservative I know that has not been through this. In fact, every 4 years, every 2 years, Republicans are racist, sexist, misogynistic, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic. Oh, they want dirty air and water, and they want to kill your children and throw Granny over a cliff. Now, the left has also rushed to judgment in the wake of other major events. They've been wrong. On this program, we've been right. We didn't rush to judgment in the Duke lacrosse case. Remember when the media falsely accused Richard Jewell, the Summer Olympics bombing? Remember? Because they said, oh, he fit the profile of a lone bomber because he lived with his mother. Richard Jewell was listening to my radio show. I was a local host in Atlanta at the time. He once thanked me for being the only one not to rush to judgment. Remember the rush to judgment in Ferguson, in Missouri? Do you remember the rush to judgment in Baltimore with Freddie Gray? Remember when Obama said the Cambridge police acted stupidly? You know, we have on this program adopted the we will not rush to judgment. We will wait. We will see. In the case of the Duke lacrosse kids, I went to meet with their parents. In the case of Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman, I met with George Zimmerman's attorney and George Zimmerman. Asked him tough questions. And you see it now every time there's a Supreme Court nominee, well, and it happens to be a president that's Republican that appoints him. We saw it all the time. Judge Bork, we saw it with Clarence Thomas. Politically, remember 2012? Mitt Romney was sexist. He had binders full of women's resumes. And remember, they turned his efforts to hire women into an attack about him being a sexist. Mitt Romney was not. Democrats smeared Romney. Remember, they falsely accused him. Remember Harry Reid of being a tax cheat? And then after they won the election, he had no regrets about spreading these lies, these false attacks. This happens. This is why Americans have a duty to be skeptical, because the media, the left wing, have been wrong. It's in their playbook. We see it every 2 years, every 4 years, every Supreme Court nominee, and every big high-profile case that they politicize. Here's a look at Harry Reid.
Let him prove that he has paid taxes, because he hasn't. No, I don't regret that at all. The Koch brothers, no one would help me. They were afraid the Koch brothers would go after them. So I did it on my own.
So no regrets about Mitt Romney, about the Koch brothers. Some people have even called it McCarthyite.
Well, they call it whatever they want. Romney didn't win, did he?
I regret telling a total lie and smearing somebody. From Mitt Romney to Robert Bork, to Clarence Thomas, to George Bush. Frankly, every conservative I know that has been forced at some point in their life to deal with these baseless smears, attacks, character assassination. Now, the most often used character assassination in the Democratic playbook is to call Republicans racist. It happens every election season. Take a look.
Many Republicans talk in coded racial language about takers and losers. They demonize President Obama and encourage the ugliest impulses of the paranoid fringe.
If you accept the support of Klan sympathizers before you are president, you will accept their support after you're president.
He's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
It's wrong what the leader of the Republican Party and this Congress are doing in blocking an accurate census because they don't want to count everyone that they don't think they can count on.
They are in favor of affirmative action if you can dunk the basketball or sink a three-point shot. but they're not in favor of it if you merely have the potential to be a leader in your community and bring people together. Don't tell me we've got a colorblind society.
June 7, 1998, in Texas, my father was killed. He was beaten, chained, and then dragged 3 miles to his death, all because he was black. So when Governor George W. Bush refused to support hate crimes legislation, it was like my father was killed all over again.
When you don't vote, you let another church explode. When you don't vote, you allow another cross to burn.
Real smears, real character assassination, and it happens predictably every election season, and it happens with Supreme Court nominees. This is gutter politics at its worst, and sadly, we're going to see more and more of these tactics as we now march, 43 days or so towards the midterms. We're going to have a lot more on this in a moment. But first, breaking today, it also appears the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein is hanging on to his job, at least for now, after the New York Times issued a report accusing Rod Rosenstein, and they're sticking by it, of plotting to secretly record President Trump and planning to rally cabinet officials and invoke the 25th Amendment. Rumors spread that Rosenstein might be out of a job. That was going on all morning this morning. Tonight, Rod Rosenstein has been in communication with the president, and apparently they will be meeting on Thursday. We'll have a lot more on that in a minute. Joining us now first with this developing situation and much more is South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, I can give you chapter and verse.
That was hard to sit through.
What's that?
That was hard to listen to.
Well,
that was really tough.
The problem is these are real people that are being called racist, sexist,
Absolutely.
misogynist.
Remember John McCain? John Lewis said that John McCain's campaign reminded him of George Wallace's campaign.
That's another one. And this is the problem. These are real lives that get destroyed here. What Kennedy said about Robert Bork was despicable and disgusting. What was done to Clarence Thomas was another last-minute smear.
They tried it with Alito. They tried it with Alito.
Yep. What do you make of this now that we've had time? There's not a single person in the case of Professor Ford that she mentioned that was there that has corroborated the story. And the same thing with Ms. Ramirez.
Well, number one, to the Democrats, they knew about this since July the 30th. They chose to do nothing about it. For them to complain about the process is like an arsonist complaining about a fire. The allegations against Judge Kavanaugh are collapsing. This has been the worst low point in the Senate for me, and that's saying a lot. I never thought it would get this bad. We're going to have a hearing Thursday and have a vote soon thereafter, and I look forward to supporting this good man. The takeaway for me, Sean, is that when it comes to Donald Trump, there are no boundaries, there are no rules. Whatever you need to do to destroy him or his agenda is okay, and that's very sad.
You know, Senator, we do have a serious allegation, and I've said let everybody be heard, and I know you have said the same.
Yeah.
A month ago,
we are.
The girlfriend of Keith Ellison, number 2 at the DNC, one is running for Attorney General in Minnesota, repeated physical and emotional abuse. The reason I say this is selective moral outrage, a lot of the people we're talking about right now haven't uttered a word.
Right.
So it's only guilt by accusation if you're a conservative or a Republican or appointed by a Republican.
Well, Democrats are willing to believe anything about a Trump nominee. They didn't believe anything about President Clinton, who had a long history of this. Here's what I can tell you. This man, Judge Kavanaugh, has been in very responsible jobs for well over 20 years. Not one woman has ever come forward to say they acted inappropriately in the workplace, that he used his power in an untoward way. These allegations are not about sex, they're about power. You don't become a serial rapist for a couple of years and hang it up. That's the garbage of all garbage coming from the Avenatti camp. So here's what I think will happen. Nobody in their right mind is going to deny him a seat on the Supreme Court based on allegations 35 years old, when everybody at the high school party says they don't know what the lady is talking about, Dr. Ford. And this second allegation is not even worthy of talking about. So I hope every Republican will be fair to Judge Kavanaugh, listen to what Dr. Ford says, and render a good decision here. If he is denied a seat on the Supreme Court, based on 35-year-old allegations that are uncorroborated, who in the world will come forward in the future to be a judge? There's a lot at stake here.
Senator, I couldn't get 220 people to ever stand up for me, to be honest. He said 220 people.
I know your goth buddies, and they would not be there.
No, they'd all yeah, that's true, actually.
They would not be there.
You know, I love when people come on my show and just trash me. I have guests here that we're going to introduce in a minute. I think that's true. He's had 220 people, but they went above.
Yeah. Amen.
These are women that knew him in high school, college, law school, the Bush administration, law clerks of his.
Right.
Here's my question. Many of your colleagues, when they say, I believe her,
right,
do they believe in the presumption of innocence anymore?
No, they just want to get Trump. There's no way you can say that an allegation this old, not specific to time and place, when everybody else supposedly at the party said it didn't happen, that you can render a conclusion in the favor of one person over the other. You just want an outcome. This is about outcome politics. Whatever it takes to stop Trump, we'll do. Whatever we have to say about Kavanaugh to stop him, we'll say. It's been disgusting. They've had this allegation since July. They're playing politics with it. There's been delay and deception, and it won't work. It's going to blow up in their face.
Let me ask you one final question. I'd be negligent if I didn't ask you about Rod Rosenstein and the New York Times report. They are standing by that report from last Friday.
Right.
He will be meeting with the president. I honestly think it's a setup. And I think that the president should not be the one firing Rod Rosenstein.
Right.
And I have been saying he should be fired and should go away a long time. I think it's a setup. And my question to you is, well, where's Jeff Sessions? That would be his department, his job. What is your take? What should happen, Senator?
Well, two things. I think Rosenstein should have appointed a special counsel a long time ago to look at DOJ and FBI abuses regarding the Clinton email scandal in the early stages of the Russian investigation. I think he's let us all down there. Secondly, there were 7 people in a room sometime after the election that were trying to wire the president and take him down, basically, take the law in their own hands. I believe that Rosenstein was probably being sarcastic. If he was really part of it, he should be fired. But I don't trust McCabe and Page as far as I could throw them. So if I were
President
Trump,
But he's also conflicted, Senator.
Yes, he is. He should not be overseeing the investigation of the FISA warrant because he was a part of the FISA warrant. He shouldn't be overseeing this investigation because he was in the meeting himself. I believe Rosenstein until I have reason otherwise, but if I were the president, I would make sure that I talked to him before I made that decision.
All right, Lindsey Graham. Senator, we have a lot more to get to, but we appreciate you taking time tonight. Here with more reaction.
I'll be back.
Author of the #1 New York Times best-selling book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. It's an awesome book. The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy. She's the host of Justice right here on the Fox News Channel. Judge Jeanine Pirro, Fox News contributor. Andy McCarthy, powerful column today. And Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. Let me start with both of you. You're both in politics. #1. We all know every conservative gets smeared. What's your reaction to all this, and especially based on all the people saying that were mentioned? I never knew this. I never heard this.
Well, Sean, not only am I in politics, I'm an attorney, and I'm a prosecutor my entire career for over 2 decades before I was Attorney General. So not only does the left, they don't believe in the rule of law, they want to end the law by doing this to a man of great integrity. I know him. I know Brett Kavanaugh. I've known him a couple years. I got to know him. I hired his former law clerk, who was also an Alito clerk, who thinks the world of him. And that's how I got to be friends with Brett on a personal level. This is a good man. I've done a national commercial for him, for the PAC, promoting his confirmation. And his wife, thank goodness he is a strong wife, and thank goodness he is
to go through this crap.
Absolutely nobody, and that's the strongest point he made. If he doesn't stand up and go through this and fight this, what good person would ever want to run for political office? We've all been attacked, but not like that. I mean, that's despicable what they're trying to do with 2 young daughters to this good, solid man.
The stories are falling apart, Judge. The people that they are saying are at the alleged incidents are all contradicting. You know, and all of us drank too much in college, although, you know, I was 17, tending bar. I was a junior in high school. But this new woman, Ms. Ramirez, He says I was inebriated, gaps in memory, calling, as the New York Times even said, calling people, do you remember? Because I'm not sure.
Right, exactly. Look, it is clear what's going on here, Sean, and we've run for office. I mean, I was a prosecutor, I run DA's office.
Oh, I can mention a particular New York Post cover of you.
I have many covers, but the Constitution applies to illegals, it applies to criminals, murderers, but it doesn't apply to a man who has dedicated his life to the pursuit of justice, a man who no woman in the last, I don't know how many decades, have said a bad word about him. And now all of a sudden we've got the left that is using the rules of Saul Alinsky, chaos and unruliness, to bring socialism and anarchy to this country. I'm going to ask one question, Sean. I'd like to know how many United States senators are willing to change the standards of justice against them to accusation without corroboration. And I guarantee you, if we start and go down that road, things will change.
Andy, you had a very powerful column today. I thought you and Rush made two similar but different points. You say that they cannot let these delay tactics. Dianne Feinstein had this back in July. You say they should not delay the Judiciary Committee's hearing or turn it into even more of a farce. They risk that. Rush said, confirm Kavanaugh or kiss the midterms goodbye. That's a powerful statement. And I agree with it.
Well, I agree with it, Sean. You know, look, I think there's two things going on here. Number one, with respect to Brett Kavanaugh's particular nomination, they're obviously trying to do everything they can to delay. These accusations were brought out of time and an abuse of the process to try to push it beyond the midterms so that they can try to defeat this nomination in the hope of, you know, swinging the Senate and trying to have the votes to beat him. But I think in the greater context, what's happening here is this is a shot across the bow at everybody on the right, even every moderate in America who doesn't follow the radical left agenda, that this is what they will do to you if you try to crash the party. They will stoop to
I went
any
through a history
level
lesson, and I've got
in order
a lot
to
more
destroy
tape.
people.
Yeah, Pam.
We've all been attacked. We've all been attacked in our careers, all of us. But they're trying to eviscerate.
Racist, if you say that they are a misogynist, if you say they committed sexual assault.
Right. They are trying to eviscerate a good human being, a man who has devoted his entire life to public service. Inexcusable.
And you know what? This guy, Abernathy, he's another doozy. You know, he accuses Stormy's attorney.
He mentioned gang rape.
Accuses a judge on the Circuit Court of Appeals, one on the Supreme Court, of gang rape. Mr. Abernathy, that is slander per se. That is the kind of accusation against a judge that should bring you before the grievance committee, but nothing's going to happen.
Last word. It goes to Andy McCarthy.
And the kangaroo court, have a vote.
Have the vote.
Have the vote.
Where will Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski go?
Exactly. They better go with us. They better go with Judge Kavanaugh.
You know what? They can talk all they want.
I have no recollection of the alleged incident in high school. The New Yorker magazine, meanwhile, as you noted, has published a new allegation by a classmate at Yale, Deborah Ramirez, who claims that Kavanaugh exposed himself to her, even though the magazine admits it was not able to confirm that Kavanaugh was actually in that room. And the New York Times has revealed that the allegation is so thin that it interviewed several dozen people in the past week and could not corroborate the story, could not convincingly report that, in fact, it was true. And now Michael Avenatti says that within the next 48 hours, he will be releasing even more salacious allegations against Kavanaugh. The bottom line tonight is that the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, said that this is a smear campaign against Kavanaugh, and he vowed that no matter what happens before the Judiciary Committee on Thursday, he is planning to have a vote up or down on the Senate floor in the next few weeks to get everyone in both parties on the record, Sean.
All right, Ed Henry, thank you so much for being with us. Earlier tonight on Martha McCallum, the story right here on Fox News, well, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, he came forward to defend his name in the wake of the vicious political smear campaign that is currently underway against him. Here's what he said. Take a look.
I've never sexually assaulted anyone, not in high school, not ever. I've always treated women with dignity and respect. Listen to the people who've known me best through my whole life, the women who've known me since high school, the 65 who overnight signed a letter from high school saying I always treated them with dignity and respect.
Joining us now, three women who have known Mr. Kavanaugh for over a decade, some over 25 years. Anita McBride, Monica Mastel, and Kathy Martin are with us. Thank you all for being here. I know it's hard for people that don't usually do TV. Let me start, Monica, with you. You were one of the original 65 that knew him back in his high school days. And not one has said, take my name off the list. And in total, 220 people have spoken out in favor of Judge Kavanaugh and speak of his character and what a gentleman he was. I mean, I felt bad for him having to answer certain questions tonight. What do you make of this new allegation, and why are all of you standing so strongly behind him?
I don't believe the new allegation. I believe when Brett denies something, he's telling the truth. That was not corroborated. It wasn't that the New York Times asked two people, they asked dozens of people, and they can't even find that he was in the room. So if you can't corroborate an accusation, I don't see how it can possibly be believed. But I also believe Brett when he says he doesn't do something, and he said it under oath, he didn't do it.
Look, I look at the New Yorker and I look at all the things that Mr. Ramirez said. Kathy, I'll throw this to you.
Sure.
Not one person that either Professor Ford or Mr. Ramirez bring up as substantiating witnesses in this case say a single thing that corroborates their story. Not one.
They're completely uncorroborated allegations, and Brett has unequivocally denied them. And I believe him because it's inconsistent with everything we know about him as a person. I've known him for over 20 years in the professional context in the White House, and also as a close personal friend, and nothing about this gels with the person that we know, and that is why you have had such an outpouring of support from women who know him throughout every stage of his life.
You've known him for over 2 decades.
Yes.
When you look at the 11th hour of all of this, and the fact that in the case of Professor Ford, that they had this back in July, and only today turned over the original letter to the Republicans, I mean, it's shocking to me that people. It's so wrong, as Senator Collins said, it's not fair to anybody to hold something like that back.
The timing of the release of this information is very disturbing, given that we had a full hearing and a process in place. And it isn't fair to Brett Kavanaugh, and it's not actually fair to Dr. Ford either, the way that this has unfolded. And I don't believe that the process currently has really gotten to the bottom of this, and I hope that on Thursday we will hear from both of them, and we will continue to hear what Brett Kavanaugh said today, which is that this did not happen unequivocally, and that none of it is true.
You know, Anita, if you look at the 36 years, all of these people that knew him in high school, and all these people that knew him in college, and knew him in law school, and all of these people that work with him over the years, you work with him in the Bush administration, and others, women that have clerked for Judge Kavanaugh, work with him on the court. They say that his character is really a noticeable cut above the average person. What was your experience?
Well, absolutely. You gave me the perfect question to be able to say to you, I have lived in this town and worked in this town for 35 years, 3 different administrations. I could count on one hand the numbers of people who rise to the level of such great integrity and character that I would sit here and defend to the death, like Brett Kavanaugh. And in his letter to Senator Grassley and Senator Feinstein, the recent one that was released today, he's saying he owes it to all of us to defend his dignity. We owe it to him because he is an example of really what is happening in this country right now. This is a sickening spectacle of what's happening on Capitol Hill. I've never seen anything like it, and I have been through a number of Supreme Court nominations in 3 different administrations. This is really such a shock to our institutions that are there to protect the fairness for everyone.
Monica, Kathy, Anita, You're three of over 200 that speak the same way about Judge Kavanaugh. I think it's important the American people hear from you. Thank you all for being with us. When we come back, we'll have more on Judge Kavanaugh. Also, Rod Rosenstein will meet face-to-face with President Trump on Thursday. Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett have the latest developments and much more. Stay with us. First, we usually go to Sarah because she gives us news, but let's go to you first on this.
You may be right that this could be a setup to get the president to fire Rod Rosenstein, and of course the media and Democrats, which is redundant, would go hair on fire crazy about it. So in the alternative, perhaps it would be wise to simply relieve Rod Rosenstein of oversight of the special counsel case pending an investigation into these very serious charges.
Greg, I'll throw this to Sarah. Sarah, I have never been more certain in my life that they want the president to fire Rosenstein, and if he would have done it on Friday, they would have called it and compared it to the Saturday Night Massacre, call it a Friday Night Massacre. They want it so bad they can taste it. Is he conflicted? Yes. Are there major problems? Yes. The president shouldn't have to do this. That's Jeff Sessions. That's his department. Where is he again?
Where is Jeff Sessions, Sean?
No
I mean,
idea.
everybody is asking these questions. And I think Greg has a point here. Look, the allegations in the New York Times are very serious. Whether or not there are people within the administration that were willing to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove the president or wiretap the president at one point in time. The president needs to investigate this. Whether the Inspector General investigates it,
well, they're saying
I don't
that
know.
he was being sarcastic to Andrew McCabe, who we also know lied.
Yes, maybe. We think a lot of people are lying, Sean. There's a lot of people that have been lying, and the New York Times had that anonymous op-ed out, apparently from somebody in the administration. I think the most important thing for the president to do in order to regain the trust back of his Department of Justice is to do what Greg said. Find a way to investigate this matter, put it behind them, and if he finds out that Rod Rosenstein really did do that and not in a joking matter, he has the authority under Article 2 to remove him.
But Rod has the keys to the kingdom. Rod gets to decide. Wait a minute. He gets to decide and tell Mueller, don't subpoena. He gets to decide release or don't release the final report.
You're thinking tactically. I'm thinking fairness and justice.
You're thinking legally.
That's right.
Being the good lawyer.
There are legitimate myriad reasons for Rosenstein to be removed from the special counsel case. He's a fact witness and he's the chief prosecutor. You can't do that. That violates federal regulations.
Sarah, last word for you tonight, as we're a little short on time, obviously, with the Kavanaugh stuff.
Sean, I do understand what you're saying. I'm going to agree with Greg on this as far as like taking a step back and looking at it. The president will make his
Nation's
decision.
capital, where the future of this very country in so many different ways is at stake tonight. And the Senate is now on the verge of what will be a historic vote. And for all of you good, honest, hardworking taxpayers that do all the hard work every day and raise your kids and love God, faith, family, and country, there's a lot under attack. We're going to break it all down for you. And you know what? Unable to stop this man's nomination based on merit for the past 2 weeks, we have now witnessed people in this country that are elected officials, Democrats, attempting to literally destroy the character, the career, the life of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. They have tried to utterly ruin what turns out to be a good man. No due process, no presumption of innocence, and literally no corroboration at all. And shamefully, they're using an almost 4 decades old sexual misconduct allegation as a political ploy. And they're demanding that a man with what is an impeccable 40-year track record prove his innocence from charges featuring, again, no corroboration, no location, no date, all because Brett Kavanaugh is appointed by Donald Trump and has a more conservative judicial philosophy. And Democrats now, by the way, as we speak, sadly, this is a sad night, criminalizing ideology. And if they successfully block this nomination, nobody is safe from these types of smears. Senator Lindsey Graham, who had a powerful moment at today's hearing, will join us. But first, it is time for our D.C. breaking news. There's so much of it. Opening monologue. So today, after weeks of being smeared by Democrats, called evil, accused of rape and gang rape, being compared to Bill Cosby, after weeks of vile death threats against his family, after weeks of being demonized all over television and in most major newspapers. Well, today, Brett Kavanaugh finally had a chance under oath to clear his good name. Dramatic testimony today, powerful testimony. Watch this.
This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. The Constitution gives the Senate an important role in the confirmation process, but you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy. Since my nomination in July, there's been a frenzy on the left to come up with something, anything, to block my confirmation. Shortly after I was nominated, the Democratic Senate leader said he would, quote, oppose me with everything he's got. A Democratic senator on this committee publicly referred to me as evil. Given comments like those, is it any surprise that people have been willing to do anything, to make any physical threat against my family, to send any violent email to my wife, to make any kind of allegation against me and against my friends, to blow me up and take me down? You sowed the wind. For decades to come, I fear that the whole country will reap the whirlwind.
Judge Kavanaugh also had this to say about the process and his family and what they have been forced to endure, again, with zero corroboration, no presumption of innocence, no due process. Watch this.
The behavior of several of the Democratic members of this committee at my hearing a few weeks ago was an embarrassment. But at least it was just a good old-fashioned attempt at borking. Those efforts didn't work. When I did at least okay enough at the hearings that it looked like I might actually get confirmed, a new tactic was needed. Some of you were lying in wait and had it ready. This first allegation was held in secret for weeks by a Democratic member of this committee and by staff. It would be needed only if you couldn't take me out on the merits. When it was needed, this allegation was unleashed and publicly deployed over Dr. Ford's wishes. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups. This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. The consequences will be with us for decades.
And after those powerful remarks, Judge Kavanaugh addressed his accuser, Professor Christine Ford. Take a look at this emotional moment from earlier today.
I have never done this to her or to anyone. That's not who I am. It is not who I was. I am innocent of this charge. I intend no ill will to Dr. Ford and her family. The other night, Ashley and my daughter Liza said their prayers, and little Liza, all of 10 years old, said to Ashley, we should pray for the woman. It's a lot of wisdom from a 10-year-old.
We aired that on my radio show. A lot of people around me, guys, girls, they all were crying. 10-year-old little girl, powerful moment. And she's absolutely right. But let's take a moment to review the charges from Professor Ford. Her allegations were made in July to a Democratic member of Congress. She claims, well, those claims come back 36 years, nearly 4 decades. And I've been saying she deserved to be heard from the very beginning. These allegations are serious. They were taken seriously by the president, by the Senate, and by everybody except, and I'll explain. But she doesn't remember a date, day of the week, location, how she got to or from the party where the alleged crime took place. All 4 witnesses that Professor Ford listed to corroborate her claims, they all deny what she is alleging. All 4 in sworn statements under penalty of felony. Let me repeat. All witnesses have given sworn statements under the penalty of felony. That means you can go to jail. To the Democrats, what that means is this has been investigated. The people that were there have already spoken. And it includes Professor Ford's friend. Her name, Leland Kaiser. Her attorney released a statement. It reads, quote, "Simply put, Ms. Kaiser does not know Mr. Kavanaugh and has no recollection of ever being at a party or gathering where he was present with or without Dr. Ford." Now, today, the Senate's independent prosecutor asked her about this irrefutable fact. Take a look.
Are you aware that they say that they have no memory or knowledge of such a party?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any particular motives to ascribe to Leland?
I guess we could take those one at a time. Leland has significant health challenges, and I'm happy that she's focusing on herself and getting the health treatment that she needs. And she let me know that she needed her lawyer to take care of this for her, and she texted me right afterward with an apology and good wishes and etc. So I'm glad that she's taking care of herself.
Now, today's testimony from Professor Ford actually raised more questions than it answered, including this moment about Ford's recent polygraph test. Let's take a look at this.
Why was that location chosen for the polygraph?
I had left my grandmother's funeral at Fort Lincoln Cemetery that day and was on tight schedule to get a plane to Manchester, New Hampshire. So he was willing to come to me, which was appreciated.
So he administered a polygraph on the day that you attended your grandmother's funeral?
Yeah, correct. Okay. Or it might have been the next day. I spent the night in the hotel, so I don't remember the exact day.
Did you pay for the polygraph yourself?
I don't think so.
Okay. Do you know who did pay for the polygraph?
Not yet, no.
I believe you said it hasn't been paid for yet. Is that correct?
Let me put an end to this mystery. Her lawyers have paid for her polygraph.
As is routine.
As is routine.
Is it your understanding that someone else is going to assist you with some of these fees, including the cost for your polygraph?
I'm aware that there's been several GoFundMe sites that I haven't had a chance to figure out how to manage those because I've never had one.
Now, just to recap, Professor Ford doesn't remember when the incident in question happened. She doesn't remember where the incident happened. She's given inconsistent answers about this important detail. She doesn't remember exactly who attended the party in question. She's given inconsistent answers about this detail. She doesn't remember how she got to the alleged party. She doesn't remember how she got back from the party. And not one person corroborates her story. We also learned today that she doesn't remember if she handed the Washington Post therapy notes just a few weeks ago. Now, just minutes ago, the Wall Street Journal editorial board fully endorsed the confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. And also moments ago, we learned that Senator Mitch McConnell announced the Judicial Committee, the Senate Judicial Committee, will in fact, Judiciary Committee, in the morning, they are moving forward, he said. And moments ago, Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee announced on Twitter that he will vote yes on Brett Kavanaugh. But none of this matters, seemingly, to people on the other side. It shouldn't be about Republican or Democrat, liberal, conservative at all. They wanted and stated from the beginning they wanted to ruin Judge Brett Kavanaugh, and over unsubstantiated, uncorroborated claims from nearly 4 decades ago, for the left at this point, it's not about sexual misconduct. Otherwise, they'd be talking about Keith Ellison. They would have had more harsh statements about Bill Clinton. This has not been about protecting victims or finding the truth even. To them, from day one, Chuck Schumer leading the way, this has all been political. It is a sad day for the country, what we had to witness today. The worst part of this is Senator Dianne Feinstein knew about these claims since July. She knew about these charges when she actually met with Kavanaugh in private. She knew about these claims when she questioned him during his public hearing several weeks ago. And when she met privately with Brett Kavanaugh, she had already been recommending attorneys to Professor Ford. Now, only after Brett Kavanaugh's nomination looked imminent, did Dianne Feinstein and Democrats announce Ford's allegations. This has been a disgraceful display of politics at its worst. Is re-election more important than another person's life here? Did anybody hear the pain in Brett Kavanaugh's voice today? And by the way, I would argue too, Professor Ford, as Susan Collins has said, nobody's been served well here. She wished to remain anonymous. The story got leaked. Her name got leaked. And without any corroboration or evidence, then you had politicians smearing Kavanaugh again and again on national TV. This is but a small sampling. Take a look.
The Senate shouldn't simply rely on hearing two conflicting accounts and decide, well, we're okay with not knowing, we're okay with the fact that we might be putting someone who committed attempted rape on the Supreme Court of the United States.
I believe her. Listen, first of all, anybody who comes forward at this point to be prepared to testify in the United States Senate against someone who's being nominated to one of the most powerful positions in the United States government, that takes an extraordinary amount of courage.
Not only do women like Dr. Ford, who bravely comes forward, need to be heard, but they need to be believed. They need to be believed. I just want to say to the men of this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing.
Let me just say right at the outset, I believe Dr. Ford. I believe the survivor here. There's every reason to believe her. She has come forward courageously and bravely.
I believe her. I stand with her. And
do you hope she shows up on Monday? Do you hope that she testifies?
I don't think she should be bullied into this scenario where it's a he said, she said. It's a sham hearing. And I don't think she should participate in it.
I believe Professor Ford. I think she's credible. And I think when the investigation is finished and when she testifies and Judge Kavanaugh testifies, I think a majority of senators will find her credible.
And the smears continued during the hearing, and today Democrats ramping up their favorite new talking point. We must have an FBI investigation. Now, this is, of course, all a political stall tactic. They want to delay. They hope we get to the midterms. They hope they win, and they hope they stop Donald Trump from fulfilling a campaign promise and a constitutional obligation. Watch the echo chamber, and on the other side of this, I'm going to explain why this is phony, and they know it. Take a look.
The behavior of several of the Democratic members of this committee at my hearing a few weeks ago was an embarrassment. But at least it was just a good old-fashioned attempt at borking. Those efforts didn't work. When I did at least okay enough at the hearings that it looked like I might actually get confirmed, a new tactic was needed. Some of you were lying in wait and had it ready. This first allegation was held in secret for weeks by a Democratic member of this committee and by staff. It would be needed only if you couldn't take me out on the merits. When it was needed, this allegation was unleashed and publicly deployed over Dr. Ford's wishes. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups. This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. The consequences will be with us for decades.
Now, an FBI investigation does not make conclusions. They all knew this. It would interview everybody that has already been interviewed, and a report would then be issued. That's it. The Democrats know it. In 1991, then Senator Joe Biden suggested that these FBI investigations are actually useless. His words, and they all agreed back then. Take a look.
The next person that refers to an FBI report as being worth anything obviously doesn't understand anything. FBI explicitly does not, in this or any other case, reach a conclusion. Period. Period. So, Judge, there's no reason why you should know this. The reason why we cannot rely on the FBI report, you wouldn't like it if we did, because it is inconclusive. They say he said, she said, and they said. Period. So when people wave an FBI report before you, understand, they do not reach conclusions. They do not make, as my friend points out, more adequate. They do not make recommendations.
Remember, all witnesses, all in this case, gave sworn statements under the threat of felony. Democrats have turned this important process into a political sham. They have turned advice and consent into destroy, malign. They can't care whose life is destroyed in this process. Obviously, they don't. Did they not see what went on today to Judge Kavanaugh, the impact on him, his family? The women making these allegations as they withheld them for all those weeks. They just want Kavanaugh stopped at all costs. Today, no one seems to put this in better perspective than Senator Lindsey Graham. What was a powerful moment when he took on the Democrats. Take a look.
What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham. That you knew about it and you held it. You had no intention of protecting Dr. Ford. None. She's as much of a victim as you are. God, I hate to say it because these have been my friends. But let me tell you, when it comes to this, you're looking for a fair process. You came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend. To my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I have seen in my time in politics.
Senator Graham will join us in studio in just a moment. And after those passionate remarks, Senator Orrin Hatch called these proceedings worse than any other confirmation proceedings in history, including those of Judge Bork and Judge Thomas. Let's watch this.
The circus atmosphere that has been created since my Democratic colleagues first leaked Dr. Ford's allegations to the media 2 weeks ago, after sitting on them for 6 weeks, I might add, has brought us the worst in our politics. It certainly has brought us no closer to the truth. Anonymous letters with no name and no return address are now being treated as national news. Porn star lawyers with facially implausible claims are driving the news cycle. I hate to say this, but this is worse than Robert Bork, and I didn't think it could get any worse than that. This is worse than Clarence Thomas. I didn't think it could get any worse than that. This is a national disgrace, the way you're being treated.
This is sadly the Democratic playbook. I warn people every single 2 years, every 4 years on my radio show and right here on this show. Republicans, be prepared to be demonized, racist, sexist, misogynist, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic. You want dirty air, water, you want to kill children, and there'll be some Paul Ryan lookalike throwing your grandmother over the cliff because Republicans want Granny to die. And it's the same now with Supreme Court nominees, same predictable behavior. We've now come to expect this. This has to change. This country deserves better. The people of this country deserve better. These people in D.C., in this swamp, they are supposed to serve us, you, we, the people. It's not about a Republican, Democrat, liberal, or conservative here. This is pure human decency that was in play today. They destroyed this man and his family. They bludgeoned him, all for the sake of power. There was zero presumption of innocence here or due process. Now the Democratic Party, every 4 years, every time we have a nomination of the Supreme Court, we know what to expect. The party of slander, besmirchment, smears, character assassination, the party of no due process, no presumption of innocence, the party that rushes to judgment. Look at all the high-profile cases, rush to judgment. Duke Lacrosse case, the Cambridge police acted stupidly, Ferguson, Missouri, Baltimore, Maryland, Richard Jewell, Trayvon Martin. Is this the party that's going to decide the fate of this country? Because in 40 days, that same party wants you to go out and vote for them. Look at your screen. You see these Republican senators? These are the people who will decide the fate of the Kavanaugh nomination. Right there. Those are the people that will decide if we still have due process in this country, if these principles exist in this country, if we still have laws predicated on the Constitution. Let them know how to vote. Call them. Tell them what's at stake. Let them know what you felt today watching these hearings. And if you're in one of these states where Donald Trump won, West Virginia, Joe Manchin, North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp, Indiana, Joe Donnelly, your Democratic senator's up for re-election. If they don't confirm Judge Kavanaugh and they go along with the smear campaign, if they go ahead and do that, are you going to vote for them? Now, there is a lot in the next few days, weeks, and months that we're going to decide, and we have a lot to get to in the course of this program tonight. I just want to say what we're looking at right here tonight, what you're looking at, you get to hold them accountable for their decisions. Never has a Supreme Court nomination been more important. This country is at a tipping point. Inalienable rights of Americans, they're going to continue, or we are going to never be able to go back. Our Constitution, all these core principles hang in the balance tonight. And we have one party that has thrown all of this to the wind and adopted smear, slander, personal politics of destruction. Unless good senators find a backbone and stick up for these core fundamental rights of every human being, like we've been talking about, due process, justice, law, order. Democrats take down Judge Kavanaugh, a man with an impeccable record of service, 40-year track record. They can take down anybody, any conservative, any politician, for any reason, on any allegation, with zero proof, ever. The Senate cannot let this happen. They cannot reward this behavior. Joining us now, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, good to see you. Thank you. Known you a long time.
Yeah, 20 years.
As it was happening, I was live on my radio show, and when I had my next break, I don't think you ever had a more powerful moment in your career, and I've known you a long time.
Thank you. Well, I just told the truth. This is not about finding the truth between Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh. It's about delaying the hearing until get past the midterms, hope they pick up the Senate, and denying this seat to be filled by Donald Trump. It's not about the FBI. If you really wanted to know what the FBI thought about this, you would have come forward when you first knew about it. It's certainly not about protecting Dr. Ford. The one thing I learned beyond any doubt today, any doubt, is this: they never intended to protect Dr. Ford. And everything I believed I knew about Brett Kavanaugh, I am now more convinced than ever that he didn't do it, that he's the right guy to be on the court, that Miss Ford has got a problem, and destroying Judge Kavanaugh's life won't fix her problem. And if we legitimize this, God help us all, because both sides can do this. To my friends on the other side, I would never have done this to one of your nominees. You should be ashamed.
You voted for people that I know you did not share their judicial philosophy.
Never picked. Used to be, if you're qualified, elections matter. Here's what the big picture is. Elections don't matter to them. They only matter when they win. Now, when we win, when Donald Trump wins, there are no rules. There are no boundaries. President Trump today, I hope you understand why he picked Brett Kavanaugh. Not only is he an incredibly qualified judge, an incredibly decent man, he and his wife are the parents of the year. If they're going to give an award for parenting, I'd give it to Ashley and Brett based on what his daughter said about who to pray for. So I'm honored to help him. If I helped him today, it's one of the highlights of my career. And to my Republican colleagues, if this guy goes down, then we don't deserve to stay in power, because it's not about power to me. It is about the process. It is about honoring elections. To my Democratic friends, Joe Manchin, I like him a lot. Joe, you can't figure this out. Trump won by 40 points. Do you really believe that Brett Kavanaugh is a serial rapist? Do you believe any of this garbage? You know, I'm sorry that Dr. Ford went through this. She shouldn't have had to go through it. But I am convinced beyond any shadow of a doubt that Brett Kavanaugh is not the man that they're trying to make him, and this is all political. So, Joe, I hope you'll step up. Heidi, I like you a lot. Joe Donnelly, great guy. Why can't you talk about whether or not we've met the burden here? If he had to prove he was innocent, he did it for me, but he doesn't have to.
Let me ask you, Republicans met in conference tonight in the Senate. Bring us inside the meeting as much as you are able to share.
It went well. I think everybody was blown away by Brett. Can you imagine doing what he did today? No. Your life has been ripped apart. You had a 32-hour hearing. You meet with every senator. They've known about this for weeks, and they spring it on you at the end. Then it goes to where Avenatti comes out and says you're a serial rapist, you drug women.
Gang rape and boys lining the halls. And
your whole life is just absolutely destroyed. I think Republicans today felt like Brett Kavanaugh not only met the test, passed the test, that this is political, and I will be brokenhearted if the Senate rejects this good man.
Bob Corker said yes.
Good for Bob.
Jeff Flake off camera said this is a tough one.
Well, I would just say, Jeff, it is tough because I don't know what happened to Dr. Ford, but I've been a lawyer all my life. I used to do this stuff for a living. Jeff, you couldn't get a warrant. She can't tell you where it happened, when it happened. It's not he said, she said. It's that she said and they said. All people named said it didn't happen.
All four.
And you can't give the date and the time. And my God, he went through a calendar of 1982. This is the most squared away guy I've ever met in my life. I was just honored to be in his presence. Again, I've never seen anybody command a room like he did. I've never seen anybody more sincere. And I've never seen anybody more used and abused than Dr. Ford was by the Democrats.
Let me ask you, it seems Jeff Flake, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and I've actually been quoting Susan Collins because she's the one that rightly pointed out from the beginning, this has been unfair to both sides here. And she's right. She's been right about that.
Yeah. Well, what I would tell Susan is that if you're the way they say Brett is, you wouldn't have the life Brett has lived. You wouldn't have 65 women coming forward. You wouldn't have 6 FBI investigations that found nothing. You wouldn't be in this profile of a job. He's been in the highest levels of government, a target for 26 years. You find out about it after the hearing's over. They knew about it. They sat on it. There's no corroboration. And the Avenatti thing tells you all they need to know about where they're headed with him. If we delay this, there'll be more coming, and he doesn't deserve it. It is time to vote.
The Senate Judiciary Committee will meet tomorrow morning.
Yeah, 9:30.
Walk us through the process. The full Senate will vote, we expect, what, Tuesday?
Yeah, we'll vote tomorrow in committee. I will go through why I believe he's qualified and capable. I will tell you without any hesitation what I think's happened here in the confirmation process. If this is the new norm, God help us all, I think he will get reported out of committee along a party line vote. I hope Jeff can get there. I would just stress again that this man has led an incredible life. Everything they're saying about him is made up, and it comes out of the left field, and it's not corroborated. Please don't take away everything he's done. He's the #1 in his class ever since he's done anything. And I think we're going to get him confirmed. And if we go to the floor of the Senate, we're going to pick up some Democrats. Let me tell you this. If you live in these Trump states and you can't figure this out, good luck to you.
Let me ask you one last question. As you look at the emotion of today and all that happened, I have my best friend from 3rd grade. His name is John Gomez. Yeah. And John called me yesterday. He goes, Hannity, you always say every 2-4 years, Republicans are racist, sexist, my whole list, as he calls it. Yeah. And he goes, I think I understand it a little more now, why you always do it. Because when you say these horrible things, and now we've gotten used to it, we expect it. It's like my father was killed all over again. Elect Republicans and black churches will burn, or crosses are going to burn. Or Republicans don't want to count African Americans in the census, Al Gore said. This has to stop, Senator.
Those are political arguments that we can handle, and people obviously don't buy it.
Though, isn't it?
This is destroying somebody.
Yeah.
I would hope and pray that I never get this desperate as a political person to destroy somebody. This was a wholesale effort to take a good man and ruin his life, and it backfired on him. This is not about political arguments. This is not about what they will do, what we will do. This is about the fact that they were willing to set a man up and destroy his life. And
it was hard to watch this today.
It was really hard to watch. And when he talked about his daughter, you know, let's pray for the lady too. This is a good man. Please vote for him.
You know, Senator, I think the reason your moment was so powerful is it was raw and real and unplanned.
It was totally real.
I think you reflected the views of many Americans.
You know what got me was, why won't you agree to the FBI investigation? What do you got to hide? These are the same people that sat on the information that made it impossible for us to do an investigation because they wouldn't help us, knew it for weeks, planned what they're doing, intentionally, I am convinced, outed Dr. Ford for the political moment that we saw today.
Sad.
And it blew up in their face, and I hope America understands that if this is the new way of doing business, we're going in the wrong direction, and we got a chance to turn it around beginning tomorrow at 9:30.
And in 40 days, the American people get their chance.
Yeah.
Senator, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. All right, for the latest on how Capitol Hill is reacting to today's hearings, we go to Ed Henry. Ed.
Sean, good to see you. Breaking tonight, as you just noted a moment ago, Republican Bob Corker, he was sitting on the fence. He just announced he is a yes for Judge Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court. We're also learning the Senate Judiciary Committee will meet tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, expected to vote. Then they hope to get it to the Senate floor. That's going to be the real fight, could come as early as Tuesday. Now, after several hours of testimony by Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh, these are still uncorroborated charges, so lawmakers in both parties are basically unmoved. Some Democrats have been opposed since the night Kavanaugh was nominated. Many Republicans say, as you just heard from Lindsey Graham, this was character assassination and that there are several holes to Dr. Ford's story. So this is going to come down to a handful of votes. Look at these folks right here. Republican Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Jeff Flake, plus Democrat Joe Manchin, maybe a couple other Democrats from red states. The four lawmakers you see there, they met tonight behind closed doors for 30 minutes to think about what exactly they're going to do next. They're keeping their cards close for now. Now, Democrat Chris Coons tonight called for a 1-week delay in the proceedings, perhaps hoping to get momentum for a new FBI investigation. That does not seem likely to happen. Republican John Cornyn, meanwhile, said the longer Republicans wait to vote, there will just be more unverified allegations thrown at Kavanaugh. Cornyn declaring that this idea that the judge is guilty until proven innocent is like a police state. Watch.
It's time to vote. The longer that the nomination remains open, we know that more and more of these scurrilous, anonymous, and uncorroborated allegations will be made. Unfortunately, that's part of the search and destroy process that, frankly, I think is an embarrassment to the Senate.
That is sort of the lingering core concern here, is about his credibility. He's worked very hard to put forward the aspects of his life that are admirable, that fit the choir boy narrative. But I think it's undeniable that there's a whole series of incidents and events in his life that also fit the frat boy image.
Republicans have only 51 votes in the Senate, so they can only afford to lose one Republican. If they lose two, Kavanaugh could go down unless they get Manchin or other Democrats on board, Sean. That's why those four we showed on the screen a moment ago, they're on the fence. They are key to all of this, Sean.
All right. By the way, Senator Jerry Moran now is a yes. That's just breaking seconds ago. That is very good. All right. When we come back, we've got so much more reaction, a lot more breaking news. We're going to break down where senators are coming out. They seem to be coming out by the minute now. Bob Corker, yes. And we'll have the latest vote count when we get back. We'll check in with Matt Schlapp, Sarah Carter, Carrie Severino, and later a glaring example of huge liberal hypocrisy. Juanita Broderick will join us in studio. Where were these people then? Straight ahead. All right, we're live in Washington, D.C. Kristen Fisher has the very latest on how lawmakers are now at this hour reacting to today's blockbuster hearings, and we're getting more information by the minute. What are you hearing, Kristen?
Yeah, and also more information from the White House, Sean. President Trump says that he was riveted by this hearing. He watched almost all of it from the White House, but he waited until after it was over to weigh in. And just minutes after the committee adjourned, he tweeted out his support for the nominee and his disdain for the way that Democrats on the Judiciary Committee had treated him. He said on Twitter, quote, "Judge Kavanaugh showed America exactly why I nominated him. His testimony was powerful, honest, and riveting. Democrats' search and destroy strategy is disgraceful, and this process has been a total sham and effort to delay, obstruct, and resist. The Senate must vote." Now, there was a lot of concern within the West Wing that Judge Kavanaugh hadn't been forceful enough in his interview on Fox earlier this week. Clearly today, he did not have that problem. It's also clear that the White House was very pleased with Senator Lindsey Graham's performance. Both Kellyanne Conway and Sarah Sanders tweeted about it during the hearing. The White House press secretary said, quote, "Lindsey Graham has more decency and courage than every Democratic member of the committee combined. God bless him." And you know, Sean, that was a real turning point. So was Kavanaugh's opening statements after what many in the West Wing considered to be somewhat of a shaky start, because even they, some of them at least, conceded that Dr. Ford did appear to be credible. But by and large, Sean, President Trump very pleased with Judge Kavanaugh's performance today.
All right, Kristen Fisher, thank you. In Washington, here with reaction, Chief Counsel for Judicial Crisis Network, Harry Severino, Chairman of the American Conservative Union, longtime friend of Judge Kavanaugh, Matt Slapp, Fox News contributor, Sarah Carter. I don't know about all of you. Everybody that I know that watched this today, so many people said it was hard and painful. They cried. It was to watch. You saw it. They destroyed this man's family. Allegations flying around everywhere. No corroboration on any of them.
Sean, it was riveting because I think the American people saw for the first time, really saw what was happening to this man, what was happening to Judge Kavanaugh and his family. And for the first time, I think we all realized as a nation, it's not that we're dismissing Dr. Ford. It's not that we're dismissing that maybe something did happen to her, but we're a system based on justice. You are innocent until proven guilty. And there was no evidence other than he said, she said, corroborating what happened, what Dr. Ford alleged happened to her. And I think at that point, when we hear this man cry out and say, look at what you've done to my family, look at what you've done to our nation, is this what we're going to do to each other? I think at that point, the country took a step back and people were swayed by Kavanaugh.
And I really thought Lindsey Graham became the leader of the U.S. Senate today.
Yeah, no, I have to tell you, I've had my differences with him, but I just saw him out in the green room.
By the way.
I gave him a bear hug.
Me tonight.
I gave him a bear hug. You know what we kept saying as we were shouting at the TV today was like, let Lindsey speak. He understands the moment, Sean. We're in a very unique moment. We're in a moment when we could actually get 5 votes on the Supreme Court for a constitutional order. We can actually have a Senate majority that follows through on promises, and we can still hold on to this House majority. It all comes down to this very basic thing. Do our supporters out there, our grassroots supporters, believe it when we say we're going to do things like confirm off that list? That tweet from our president, most presidents would have thrown this guy to the side at the first sight of all this controversy. He stuck with him, and I'm proud of him.
Carrie.
Yeah, I think a lot of people saw, again, very, very emotional and compelling testimony from Dr. Ford. But then Judge Kavanaugh as well, you saw that. And it looks like, you know, maybe she was, as I think Kavanaugh himself said, she may very well have experienced real sexual assault sometime in her life, but all of the facts piling up go to the point that he isn't the one who did it. You have all the people who she said were there, who testify to say, I don't think this party happened, or I wasn't at this party. I don't, or even her good friend, lifelong friend, who supports her in general, but says, I don't even think I know Brett Kavanaugh. I don't think I was at this party. So when you get past you know, trying to sort out the memories of the 30 years, there aren't any corroborating facts. That didn't change. In fact, even some of the facts in the story shifted. What you really could see, though, is the pain they've both been put through. All of that is the Senate Democrats. I think so many things came out that showed it's on their shoulders. They seem to have been manipulating this whole process, holding back the allegations.
That was the worst part.
Yeah, even some
politicizing. An orchestrated attack. Look, there's no way, I've been in politics a long time, there's no way you have a charge one day, followed 12 or 18 hours by another attack, and then another accusation.
This is a 40-year career with not a single allegation in 40 years. and then in the 11th and a half hour here, then they come flying in. Yeah. And it's sort of like, where does he go to get his good name back?
I'll tell you where he goes.
Where?
What he did today connected to the American people. It was raw. It was real. We're split 50-50. And we just have to realize this. These Supreme Court battles are going to be blue versus red. I hate it. That's where we are. We got to make sure our people understand what Brett told most of the fair-minded Americans out there is that we're better than this.
Is there any fair-minded Democrat? Is Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Donnelly, where are they?
Yeah, where are they? But one thing we do know for sure, Sean, the American people now see what we are up against. And they look at the Democrats and they're going to look at this and they are going to say, this is a sham. This is a disgrace. You've run two people through the mud and they're not going to put up with it anymore. And they're going to go to the voting.
This is why, last word, Carrie, I make a big deal over every 2 to 4 years, racist, sexist, I run through my list, because it's got to stop.
It's got to stop.
Yeah, no, we can't let uncorroborated smears ruin a good man's reputation and life of public service. So I think they're right to move on to a vote.
Will he get confirmed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, we'll see. When we come back, Juanita Broderick on the left's shameful double standard when it comes to sexual misconduct allegations. She, along with Greg Jarrett, are coming up next. Busy News Night. Stay with us. More on what we call selective moral outrage on this program. We bring in Juanita Broderick. Remember, she told the story about Bill Clinton and rape back in the 70s. Also with us, the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Russia Hoax, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Juanita, I did the second interview with you, and even through this last election, a lot of the people we're hearing from now, they were silent.
Yeah.
They didn't want an FBI investigation for you that I remember.
Oh, no. Senator Feinstein and Senator Durbin and Senator Schumer wanted nothing to do with my case. All Democrats refused to read my deposition with the independent counsel. Wouldn't touch it.
They never once reached out to you.
No.
These people that are still there, the ones acting, the ones that are so supportive of the allegations.
Exactly. No, they never reached out to me.
And when this happened to you, because I've interviewed, it was 30 minutes later you told the woman you were with, and your lip was 3 times its normal size?
Right, and bleeding. Yes, the woman came back to the room and found me when I didn't show up for the seminar. And of course I told her immediately, well, look at the condition I was in. My clothes were torn, my lip was just huge, and I was devastated.
And afraid.
Yeah, oh goodness, yes.
And did nobody, any Democrat, the same people that are acting so indignant, nothing?
No, absolutely nothing.
Greg Jarrett, from a legal standpoint, the FBI has also said that this is not within their jurisdiction. We played Joe Biden. This was a talking point for delay today, wasn't it?
That's right. By law, the FBI is not allowed to investigate a non-federal crime. They can only do background checks. And as Biden pointed out, they simply take witness statements. They don't judge guilt or innocence or the credibility of particular witnesses. So it was an utter canard over and over today call for Kavanaugh to ask for an FBI investigation.
Juanita, you were here today, and even during 2016, you felt compelled to speak up about the double standard.
Yes.
What do you say to those Democrats that clearly this is about politics, not about what's right?
Well, I clearly think if Senator Feinstein and Senator Durbin had known that I was outside, I think they should have walked out and apologized to me for what they did to me in 1999, completely turning their backs on me.
And Kathleen and Paula.
Yes.
And Jennifer, who was called a liar.
Exactly. Yes.
I've known you a long time now.
Yeah.
God bless you. Good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you
Sad
so
that we
much.
have to talk about a double standard.
Oh, I know. Here we go again. Yeah.
When we come back, there's some breaking news. Ed Henry will have a live report right here out of Washington as we continue.
It's time to vote every Democrat out.